On the optimism scale, by comparison to last year, where are you this year?
Ooh, good question. Well, the optimism scale last year, for myself, and I never buy into the hype anyway, so I constantly worry regardless. Obviously, from an outsider's perspective, the optimism scale last year was through the roof. But from my own standpoint, I kind of like the fact that we're going to fly below the radar a little bit, and I like the fact that the players have a chip on their shoulder, and they're out to prove a lot of people out there wrong. So I prefer it like this rather than we're already being anointed prior to 2013 World Series champs and all that kind of stuff. I just don't think these guys went through spring training last year every day hearing how great they were, and I don't know that it helped things.
What were you thinking, Alex, when Jose Reyes pulled up after that first at-bat?
You know what? I didn't even realize it because obviously the ball was caught when he wasn't out in the field the next inning, and Ryan Gomes was out there. I said, "Where the heck's Reyes?" So then our phones weren't working because it was packed in Tampa, and we'll see it tonight too. When these stadiums are filled, you don't get texts, you don't get emails. So we were waiting to find out what it was. The fact that we didn't see him jump up and down or really react, I thought basically what it ended up being that it maybe just it caught him a little bit, but it wasn't going to be serious. And you're always expecting the worst when guys get hurt. So when it's not as bad as you would think, you tend to just deal with it, and you don't react as poorly as you would if the guy's going to be out for months and months or the entire year.
There's got to be a moment where you're going, no, you can't. You got to be kidding me, right?
One at bat.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't, and I'm more concerned about that on the mound. And it's not to say Jose Reyes is not incredibly important to this club, but our issues have been on the mound so much so these past few years. That's where we need to have the health. And that's not to say I want any position players going down, but I'm more you got to be kidding me if a guy has to come off the mound with an elbow injury or something like that, because there's a pretty good chance they're done for the year. So position players, they miss time here and there. Ideally, you don't want it to happen, but the guys on the mound are the ones that could be really long-term, and those are really hard to replace.
It was funny. I was going to say it was funny the way it went, because Reyes gets hurt, you lose a one-sided ball game, and all of a sudden Game 2 becomes the most important game of the year, or it seemed that way. And in that game, you got a very good pitching performance from Drew Hutchison. We've been talking a lot lately about who's going to swing this thing around, and I've been arguing Hutchison. If he can fill that void, it makes everything else kind of fall into place. So for him to pitch that way in that game as bad as Reyes made you feel like, whoa, Hutchison had to make you think, okay, this is good.
No, it certainly is, and we obviously want to win every series that we play, and I didn't feel good leaving last night, and people that try to make you feel better say, you know what, we split a series against a very good team and 4 really, really good starters, but you have a chance to win the series, you want to do it. But Drew's someone that we had high expectations for 2 years ago when we called him up. Really thought he looked like he was back in the Arizona Fall League at the end of last year, and I'm not surprised. And I know he'll have his starts where he doesn't do well, but I really think he can have a year like Sean Markham had for us in 2010 when Sean was our opening day starter and he put up an ERA for us in the 3s. Similar type of guy, a little more power, a little more velocity, but great competitor, great athlete, strike thrower. Not afraid at all, and I think he's going to give us a chance to win a lot of games.
Well, and at this time last year, it was Hutchison and Kyle Drabek sort of hanging out together, the two Tommy John guys. Hutchison moved along, Drabek a slightly different situation. Do you have any hopes that he can help you this season?
We certainly do. We know the talent and the ability is there. Just like you said, though, he's a little bit more behind. Velocity's not necessarily all the way back. He's 89 to 92. Command still needs to work on some of those things. This was his second Tommy John, and it's understandable that it would take a little bit longer to get back. But hopefully at some point he can be down there, he can get hot, and if we have a need, he can give us a big boost as well.
I want to jump back to Reyes for a second. There was a lot of criticism after he got hurt about the organization playing him in Montreal and whether he should have played there on a hard turf. Do you want to address that?
Sure. And anytime people get hurt, I understand that as well, but at some point he needed to play, and our first 7 games were going to be on turf. So regardless of the fact, we did the MRI, showed mild inflammation. We shut him down until the issues subsided. Then from that point, you run him on the backfield. You have him take batting practice. You have him take ground balls. You have him do sprints. You have him do all those things. If he pronounces himself fit and ready to go at that point, for the sake of optics, if you want, you could say, look, we're going to have you sit at home on the couch for a week. just so people can say we waited a week. But if he feels good, and we've done every test that we can, and we've given him the rest, at some point he needs to play in a game, and it could have very well been a rehab assignment in Florida. But he played both games in Montreal. If he had any problems at all, he would have said something. We even offered to have him DH. He didn't want to do it. And again, he played day game after night. No problems at all. And then he had the off day on Sunday. So I think it was a freak thing that happened. He didn't even get to the field to stand on the turf. I mean, it was when he tried to accelerate. And before you get ready for every game, you're doing sprints up and down the line regardless. So I just think it's a convenient thing to try to point to that. But regardless where he would have been playing, I think it was bound to happen.
Okay, let's address the other story that's out there, which is Irvin Santana. Ken Rosenthal's story, if people don't know, the story that several of your players either offered to or were asked to defer money in order to pay for Irvin Santana, pay him $14 million to play this on a one-year deal. An unusual situation. You don't hear about it in baseball. It doesn't happen very often. It's something I think you have to clear through the union even to do it. What happened there, Alex?
Okay. Bob, you're going to love this.
Okay.
Well, my one response is I'm going to do my best to give you guys something here.
Thank you.
We
appreciate that.
Right, this is the part
Thanks a lot.
This is the part that Bob isn't going to like. I'm not really going to get into the specifics of the... But hold on. I'm going to give you guys something. I'm going to throw you a bone of what happened with this Santana circumstance. But obviously I'm very well aware of the story. Got emails and texts and phone calls. And I guess what I would say is the only thing I can really say to this is that we were prepared to sign the player. I think everyone's at this point clear that we felt we had an agreement in place. Again, we didn't have anything signed in terms of getting him examined, things like that. We felt we had an agreement in place. Now, how the money would have been allocated, how that would have been done, regardless, if something like that was to happen or not, that wouldn't have been hidden. So if anybody restructures their contract or defers money, like you talked about, Stephen, the union would have to sign off on that. That's made available to everybody. No one would have been hiding anything at all. And there's things that we may choose to do from a payroll standpoint, from a structure, from a contractual structure standpoint that might make more sense for us. But irrespective of the fact, we had the ability to sign him. This was where he told us he wanted to be, and we were prepared to go forward with it. What the fallout from that is, or this story, I know where a lot of people want to go with it, but it doesn't take away from the fact that we had the dollars to sign the player. Again, how that money was going to be allocated, how it was going to be done, those are things I would keep to myself.
Well, I think what really captures people's interest is if players were coming and saying, we'll give up some if you bring him in. Can you at least tell us if players did in fact offer to do that?
Well, I know our players obviously want to do whatever they can to win. Players are not allowed to defer money without receiving a tangible benefit back. So regardless if they wanted to or not, it wasn't the same thing, but if you watch the ESPN shorts with A-Rod years ago when he was trying to be traded to the Red Sox, he was talking about giving money back.
Like they can't take a pay cut, you're saying?
No, players cannot take a pay cut. And if players are going to restructure their contracts, they're not allowed, the union would not allow them to restructure contracts without receiving some type of tangible benefit. So whether players came to us, we went to them, whether this all, to what level any of this went on, I don't want to get into it. But again, there has to be a tangible benefit to the player, and that could be money, it could be a lot of things. So that's the only way that it would ever be allowed.
I got to ask the question though, because the other part of that is it suggests that you didn't have a lot of rope to work with this offseason financially.
And I understand that as well. I mean, our payroll is a very healthy payroll. Again, just like Irvin Santana and so on, there's ways to get things done. And when Irvin Santana presented itself and he approached us and wanted to be here on a one-year deal, we were able to go forward with it. How we were going to go forward with that, structures, things like that, obviously I'd keep that in-house. But again, with multiple things in the off-season, you can sign free agents, you can structure contracts a certain way, you can make trades and have players going back the other way. You can do all kinds of things, but it's always been, I have the ability to have that conversation with Paul, and he has the conversation with the ownership, if it's the right deal, to explore some of those things.
I'm a little puzzled because I'm led to believe that your payroll this year is in the 137, 138 range. Am I pretty close?
That's fair from a salary standpoint, and then we have other things you have to factor in, DL money, players on option. But in terms of the 25-man, probably in that range.
Okay, during the offseason, a senior member of the family indicated to me that the payroll would be pushing 150 this year. That suggests to me that you had that $14 million or something pretty close to it. You did not? Without going to Rogers?
I don't personally go to Rogers. I go to Paul, and I have that discussion with Paul, and Paul's the one that deals from the ownership level. So, again, we always, like I've always talked about, we have an area that we're asked to stay with from a payroll standpoint, and then beyond that area, we're able to have the discussion. If it's the right deal, the right dollars. And another thing, too, is some of these contracts that were signed in the offseason, regardless of payroll or things like that, I don't know that, again, we didn't necessarily see the value. I don't know that for us those deals would have made any sense, regardless of how people want to speculate what dollars may or may not have been available. But again, we always have the ability to have the conversation. And I can't stress enough, Irvin Santana would have been here today, I believe, had Chris Medlin not been hurt.
And he winds up signing with Atlanta.
Right.
The health of this ball club aside, because you can never anticipate what the health of the club is going to be. This extra year of these guys being together, what's in your mind the impact of that, or the import? I
think very important. And that's an intangible component, but last year this wasn't Mark Burley's team, this wasn't RA's team, this wasn't Reyes' team. These guys, they were all new.
But isn't that problematic to some extent too?
Yeah, I think last year to some extent it was, but that would be making an excuse. I mean, bottom line is whether it's World Baseball Classic, new players, we didn't win. I mean, whether it's health of the players, we can go through the list. No one wants to hear excuses or the whys. We didn't get it done. But do I think there's a benefit, the fact that these guys have been together now? This is their team now that they're not the new guys who walked through those doors, that they've been together. I think it's been huge. And I also think, just even spring training, we had so many fewer distractions than last year. We didn't have a ton of media coming in every day, pulling at guys left, right, and center.
Well, Bob wasn't there. So that's a distraction.
That was a distraction you didn't have. You're welcome.
Bob will always do stuff like that for your team.
But and also, again, whether it's players not being there for the World Baseball Classic, all those things can be overcome, but they're not ideal. So not having to deal with those things this spring training certainly helped.
But we talked to Beeson a little bit about this. Leadership on this team. It was intangible last year. It wasn't obvious who the guy was. And I'm not saying you always have to have one guy. And sometimes you can have more than one. But on the championship teams of 92 and 93, it was clear who the leader of the club was. The guy that said the right thing at the right time, either publicly or privately. If that guy didn't materialize last year, was it incumbent upon either you or Paul to go and create that guy, or go and find that guy and say, will you take the bull by the horns?
Well, I understand the question there as well. Ideally, you'd love to have that one guy in the clubhouse that'll grab a guy by the throat and get in someone's face. I think that the era of those type of players is quickly going away, probably for the lack of a better way to express it. A lot of players have the same ages right now, and you just don't see, there's not too many guys that are like that. All that said, I don't know that our issues last year, and again, we can point to a multitude of things, whether it was the deep defense, the rotation. I always point back to the fact that we were 29th in starters ERA. And you can have the best clubhouse guys, the greatest group of position players going. But if you're second to last of 30 clubs in starters ERA, I just don't see how you're going to be a contending team. No matter what the makeup is, no matter how guys are doing and saying the right things, when you're giving up 5-6 runs in the first inning, it's hard to overcome that night after night. So for us, as I've said before, I think this team will go as far as the rotation will bring us. I think the rotation is improved. One, just guys getting off to stronger starts, whether it's Burley or RA, or having a guy like Drew in the rotation, and obviously a guy like Brandon being totally healthy for the entire year is certainly important as well. So, and from a defensive standpoint, I think we're certainly going to help those guys on the mound.
Alex, how are you going to manage innings for McGowan and for Hutchison?
Drew, we're not going to necessarily have a number in mind. Similar to Markham. Markham was just under 200 innings, and that was because we had put him on the deal just before the All-Star break, and we shuffled the rotation around just to give him a little bit of a break. but he had pitched 160 innings in prior years. Drew is in the same boat. He's done that. So to bump him up another 30 or 40 innings would not be a big deal. With McGowan, that's going to be a wait-and-see approach. If we can move him back a few days, maybe as the year's going along, assuming success and health, he could skip a start. But he's not a 21-year-old kid anymore. He's developed. He's mature. He's going to communicate with us when he needs a break.
Your new catcher is already drawing very positive reviews, and again, this is something we've talked about. I mean, are you seeing something already that says defensively behind the plate, him catching your staff, this is going to help?
I am, and I think the one thing that stuck out to me is the game calling. He's very, very creative back there. Especially you notice it on some of those great hitters will sit on a pitch, and the way he's going to get guys to mix and match and work on a certain pitch and use a certain pitch. Even you take a guy like Burley and the flow that they had together. I understand Burley had a great game, so anyone's going to feel good back there. But I think the owner's a big part of that as well, just keeping the pace and the tempo, knowing that Burley isn't going to shake. But it's fun he's been able, and even Drew, he wasn't sharp. He had a good outing, but his stuff wasn't there. He wasn't, and even Brandon basically was a one-pitch guy last night. Didn't really hit on his slider, didn't really hit on his curveball, didn't really hit on his changeup. And the fact that not Navi for me, and obviously Brandon as well, was able to get him through 5 innings and 4 runs, it certainly could have been worse. So the game calling is probably the biggest thing that's jumped out to me.
At what point last year did you realize you had to make a change behind the plate?
I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of things obviously didn't go well last year, so I don't know that there was one moment in time and said we needed to make a change. You're trying to get through the season. You're still trying to be as competitive as you can and win every game. I think once we got to the off season, you step away from it for a little bit, not be as close to it as you are during the year. We just felt we needed to make a change, and it's no slight to JP. He was great for the organization, great in the community, worked hard. Obviously did not have the year anybody expected. Mm-hmm. And we just felt we needed to make a change. But at the same time, I hope he has a great year for the Rangers, and we all do well.
Well, and most people understandably would point to his offensive numbers, but as important was his work behind the plate, and not just pass balls, but game calling. I mean, did you have a sense during the course of the year last year that you could upgrade behind the plate defensively?
I mean, I know there was a lot of talk about that. Game calling is so hard to quantify. So, and we still try to do things in the office, try to come up with that, but it's a very hard thing to quantify. And in fairness to JP last year, the only guy he caught from a consistency standpoint was Burley. RA had Tolley pretty much in Blanco, and 3/5 of the rotation was just in and out. We kept changing guys. We never had any continuity there. So Burley had a Mark Burley year, 200 innings, a 4 ERA, won 12 games. So I don't know to fault JP from that perspective. So I don't know that it's so much about being critical of JP. I think it's more praising the owner, and that's maybe experience in the league, things like that. But I just don't know that it's fair to even blame any of the issues with the rotation last year on JP, because Burley's the only one he caught, and Burley was as good as he's been in pretty much his entire career.
With Ryan going struggling at the plate off the top, Alex, how you have Diaz there, who is a very good defensive, not going to give you a lot offensively, but he's going to give you great defense. Mycer-Asturias looks more comfortable this year and at the plate. How far do you go with Ryan Goins before you maybe send him down to get his sack together?
Well, that's fair, and he's we're not expecting huge offensive numbers for him. He's going to hit the bottom of the lineup. What he brings is a great glove, the strong arm. I mean, some of those plays that were turned, the arm strength came into play. I think it's a collaborative thing. How's our offense performing overall? Do we need to upgrade offensively, whether it's Ryan, whether it's Johnny Diaz, and so on? But I don't know right now. I mean, it's so early, and so far Asturias is hitting, Melky's hitting, Lynn's hitting, and Batista's hitting. The other guys through a 4-game set haven't necessarily swung the bat great, but again, we just faced 4 great starters, and who knows what the stats end up being in the next 3 days. So the one thing about Diaz, though, offensively, the numbers might not be, he will grind in at bat for you. He'll work the count, he'll put the ball in play, he'll draw a walk, he'll make contact, and he can contribute some things. And I think Ryan can do some of those things as well.
Every player, every manager goes into the season with expectations. How about you? I mean, do you feel pressure to make this work this year?
No, but I mean, well, yes and no. And pressure, no one year more than any other, because I think Stephen and I talked about this. I remember when we won 85 games my first year and won 81 the next year. You're not getting to the playoffs. You're not enjoying it. You don't sit there and say, well, we won 85 games, 81 games. weren't expecting to contend. Good year, give yourself a pat on the back. You're just not wired that way. So regardless, I understand whether it's media or fans, there's certain expectations on certain years, and we don't run from that. But I have expectations every year, regardless of what we do with the team. And we play 6 months, we play every day. Whether you're expected to win or not, it's not fun going home at night when you lose. It's not fun getting up in the morning. It's a crazy way to live your life, but it's amazing how your mood can change just from what happened the night before.
But I mean, do you wonder how long you'll get to do this job if you can't get this team to the playoffs?
No, I don't. And that's not to say I don't appreciate the opportunity and value and things like that, but you can't think that way. You do the job to your things that you believe in. But you don't. I've been asked even in the past. Do you ever sit back and say, "Wow, you're general manager of a team"? And I've been asked that years ago. You don't. You're so in the moment. You're so in the moment of everything that's going on. You never sit back and reflect. You're worrying about the team. You're worrying about the draft. You're worrying about player development. You're worrying about everything going on. You never really sit and concern yourself with your own status.
Last question. The manager will join us a little bit later on. I'm going to ask him the same question. Are we going to see Lind against left-handed pitching? And if you were the manager, would you have had him in there either of those two games?
This is the bee in his bonnet
Fair.
right now.
Oh, okay.
You would have had him in there.
Yeah.
It's fair. I think
Unless you're absolutely convinced this guy can't hit left-handed pitching. And I don't care about good left-handed pitching versus mediocre left-handed
you're leaning
pitching.
in now.
Yeah, this is,
Well, I want you to know I'm serious about this.
Getting in
As
there.
long as you don't lean in.
The numbers would show that he has tremendous success versus right-handers and can still use some improvement versus left-handers. That being said, he did hit some home runs versus lefties last year. The owner's gotten off to a slow start from an offensive standpoint. He's hit a left-hander as well, especially last year with tremendous power. I do think with Adam there's a benefit if you can give him a rest. He's had some back problems in the past. Being able to give him a game off here and there, I think he'll be more productive. And he was more of a platoon player last year, and he had his best season since 2009. Now, he did have that month that he was scorching hot. He hit 400. Gibby had him in there every day, left, right, and it didn't matter. I think Gibby will tell you that he'll pick his spots. He'd say primarily he'll play against right-handers and the occasional left-handers that he's had some success against. He does make the lineup out, but I kind of like the fact that we do spell him from time to time.
I find the reference to his back problems and giving him the odd day off interesting when you rested him in games 1 and 3. I mean, was he fatigued
over the
in
course
game
of the
1
season?
in the,
No.
opener?
I told you this is the bee in his
yeah,
bonnet.
when did this happen?
This started this week.
It is David
Okay.
Price, who there is another component too, that there are career stats as well. And sometimes these guys are 1 for 10 with 5 strikeouts against, and I remember Scott Rowland saying this one time when he was benched against someone. He was 1 for 30, and he came into the manager's office. I was in there, and he said, "I'm due," which is a great line.
Let's be honest. You just don't like the beard, right? You're saying you're not playing until you get rid of the beard.
Well, he is playing because he's swinging the bat great, and he's off to a great start. But if you guys have him on here, I'll be curious what his stance is on the beard. I have no problem with it as long as he hits and he produces.